Hey, folks, thank you so much for joining the Jason Wright Show today. I have a fantastic show for you. The guest is, in a word, awesome. Dr. Noah St. John. Here's a little bit about Dr. Noah. He is the author of The Seven-Figure Expert. Dr. Noah St. John is known worldwide as the father of Afformations, not to be confused with Affirmations, Afformations, and creator of the 12-week breakthrough. Working with Hollywood celebrities, professional athletes, and eight-figure company CEOs, Noah is famous for helping people make more in just 12 weeks than they made in the last 12 months while winning their lives back. He's also the author of 25 books, including his latest book, The Seven-Figure Expert, Your Ultimate Guide to a Life of More Impact, Influence, and Financial Freedom. And you can get a free copy right here. The link is in the show notes. Check it out. I know you're going to love this conversation with Dr. Noah. I had a blast getting to know him and picking his big old brain. So please enjoy the show. And thank you so much for listening to the Jason Wright Show. If you would, please consider leaving a rating. Share this episode with anyone you think might benefit. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please click like or subscribe. Now I'll shut up and get to the conversation. Thanks for listening. There we go. Dr. Noah St. John, welcome to the Jason Wright Show, man. How are you?
I'm great, and it's great to be here, Jason.
Well, it's so good to have you. Like I said before you came on, I think that this audience is going to be right. It's your avatar. These are the people that you are speaking to on a consistent basis and that you have been speaking to. And so I'm really excited about that. And then look, I'm going to use this format, my platform. I mean, I figure after 7 years of doing this, all these conversations, I've got the right to be a little bit selfish. I want you to help me, man. I'm going to ask some questions that I would love. I want to, I'm a humble guy. And when I have an expert like you come on the Jason Wright Show, I am going to take full advantage and try to not only add value to the audience, but I don't think that I'm that unique. I think anything that you help me with is going to help others. So if you're game for it, man, I'd love to talk to you about some
I'm
things that you might be able to help me
fire
on.
away, my man. I'm an open book. Let's do it.
All right, brother. Well, let's talk first about your origin story. I know one of the things that for me, I want to know when someone has the success you have. I mean, you have been someone who has helped celebrities with mindset. You've helped people that are making seven-figure incomes go from basically that 0 to 60. You've really just helped them change their lives. Uh,
Mhm.
where does your story start?
Well, it starts from very, very humble beginnings, shall we say. I grew up poor in a rich neighborhood. And I know that's a total cliche, but it's totally true. I grew up in this little town called Kennebunkport, Maine, which happens to be one of the wealthiest communities in New England. In fact, one of the wealthiest communities in the entire country. But my family was dirt poor. And I mean that literally, because we lived at the bottom of a dirt road in a drafty, unfinished house that my parents ended up losing to foreclosure when I was just 15 years old. So from a very young age, I was painfully exposed to the gap, the chasm between the haves and the have-nots. The haves was everyone else in the community, and the have-nots was my family. Now, I'm sure everybody listening to this program has heard motivational speakers or gurus, and they get up on stage and they'll say something like, well, we were poor, but we were happy. We didn't know we were poor. Well, I'll tell you what, in my family, we freaking knew we were poor because my mother, bless her heart, reminded us every day that we were poor and miserable. So no one wasn't happy. It sucked. And so from a very young age, I hated that life of poverty and fear and lack and not enoughness. That's what I grew up with. But I saw that right down the street, there's great wealth and abundance. So I literally said from the time I was a little kid, how the heck do I get from here to there? But of course, there was no one to help me. There was no internet back then or all the things we have today. So I did the only thing that I could think of to do, which is I went to the library and I just read every book in the self-help section. I just went to the self-help section and read every book. All the classics, Dale Carnegie, Napoleon Hill, Stephen Covey. I read every book and I just immersed myself in that literature. And then I, got out into the world. I started, working and doing things like that. And I kept reading these books. But as hard as I tried, as hard as I worked, I just couldn't seem to get it to work. I couldn't seem to get the success that I really wanted. I never achieved it. And so at the age of 25, I made a decision. And that decision was really a pivotal moment in my life. And that was when I decided to take my own life. I decided to commit suicide at age 25. Now, I had been, I was just struggling to get by. I had no money. I could barely pay my rent. I was living in this little apartment in Los Angeles. My girlfriend had just left me. I had just lost my job. I mean, it was like a country song, but it was really true. I was just like, you know what? I was looking at the next 40 years of my life and I'm going, I don't want to be here anymore. I just don't want to be here. And so I made that decision and I went to do it. And at the very last moment, my life was spared, but I didn't know why. I really didn't know why. And so I realized I've got to figure out, what am I doing on this planet? What is my purpose? Why am I here? These are existential questions that humans have been asking for centuries, right? But I really didn't even know how to answer the question, let alone what the answer was. So I said, I got to figure out, what is my purpose? And so I did what I always do, is I went back to the library. And this time I read every book in the spiritual section. I just went to the spiritual section of the library and I read every book. And all the spiritual thinkers of our time, Ernest Holmes, Louise Hay, Wayne Dyer, Deepak Chopra, Neil Donald Walsh, all the spiritual thinkers. And so fast forward 5 years later, in 1997, I had these epiphanies and I realized exactly what was missing in all those books that I'd spent all those years reading. And I realized that no one was talking about it. And I also realized that this, in fact, was the reason that I was struggling, that no one was talking about. And so I realized, wait a minute, this is my purpose. This is my mission. After spending so many years of my life studying and immersing myself in this literature, I realized, oh my gosh, this is what's missing. This is what no one's talking about. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's my purpose. That's my mission. This is my message. And so I actually sat down. I wrote my very first book. It was called Permission to Succeed. And at the time I was living in this 300 square foot basement apartment in Hadley, Massachusetts. I had no money. I had like $800 to my name. And, I had no marketing skills, no sales, no, business skills of any kind. But I realized that this is my mission. This is my purpose. And if you can remember being online in 1997, remember that, we could all
Sure.
dial up and
Okay.
I remember that. I mean, that's what we had back then, but I'm like, okay, well, I gotta figure out how to, create a website. I gotta, write a book. I gotta get it out there. And so anyway, I figured all that stuff out on my own. I just, figured it out. I put up the world's, you know, ugliest website, which it turns out, as it turns out, was actually one of the very first personal and business growth websites on the internet, successclinic.com, which I still own to this day. And so I actually sold my book. It was self-published at the time. And I was started to sell it all around the world. People were buying it from countries I never even heard of. So I would just, in those days, you couldn't even collect credit cards on the internet. I would just say, hey, send me a check. So if you would send me a check, I'd mail them a book. And that's how it started back then. And then I started to get these incredible success stories of people who were using my methods, using my formula, and literally changing their lives, having life-changing results. And then in 1998, I met Jack Canfield from Chicken Soup for the Soul.
Sure.
And I showed him my self-published book, and he loved it. He just immediately got it. He totally got it. And I was like, I didn't know if he'd get it or not, but he did. Instantly he'd got that. And he literally said, he looked at it. Now remember, this is the ugliest book you've ever seen. And I'm like, he's going to laugh at me. He's going to whatever. But he was awesome. He said, hey, wow, Noah, this looks great. I'm going to send this to my publisher. And sure enough, he was good to his word. And 8 weeks later, I got a call from the Chicken Soup for the Soul publisher, and they offered me my very first publishing contract. And you can actually see it right there, right there. That is my first book, Permission to Succeed, published by the Chicken Soup for the Soul publisher. And now, all these years later, I'm actually the only author in history that has had works published by Hay House, HarperCollins, Simon & Schuster, Mind Valley, Nightingale Conan, and the Chicken Soup for the Soul publisher. No one else in history, no other author in history has ever done that. So, as you mentioned, we've been able to help Our clients add over $3 billion collectively, and it's really been an incredible journey.
That is remarkable, and there's so much relatable there as well, all the way to the point of, the the decision to potentially take your own life, been there.
Mhm.
And then it's interesting, I've just dealt with someone, very close to me who is just on the other side of having done that very thing. So it's really kind of
Mhm.
ironic that I'm talking to you today. And so so one, I'm so glad that you were able to turn from that and go where you're going now. The question I have though in all of that, it sounds beautiful. It sounds like, I mean, Forrest Gump, and at the end of it, you're sitting there waiting for little Forrest to get off the bus, and it's awesome.
Yep.
But somewhere in that, I gotta believe before you sold the book, before Jack Canfield comes along, all that, there had to have been a point where you hit some roadblocks and you thought to yourself, "Man, I came from the depths of despair to climbing out of it, but now, a am I was I right? Was there ever that moment? And if so, what kept you going forward?" Because one of the things too, I want the listeners to understand, when you talk about starting in 1997, starting to self-publish, I can tell you today, as someone who is a self-published author, it's a hard beat down today with 99 Designs, Fiverr, Upwork, all the resources that are there. It is an incredibly hard and arduous task. So the fact that you were doing it back then, and again, coming out of the pit you were, what were the things that you were doing tactically on a daily basis to keep moving forward until that huge breakthrough finally came?
Well, to answer your first question, yes, there were thousands of those moments. I mean, there are thousands of them. And the first year, I mean, I basically cried myself to sleep every night because I'm like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have any money. I don't have any help. And it was really awful. It was very painful. And I kept saying, man, do I have to go back and get a job? Because I mean, I got to eat, I got to pay the rent. And I did actually have to go back and get a job for, I think, like a week and a half. And then I just said, I can't do it. I just had to quit because I'm like, I can't do it anymore. So I got to find a way. And, so yeah, there were many, many of those moments, certainly in the first year. Um, and then to answer your second question about, self-publishing or publishing as we know it today, yeah, I mean, as I often tell people, trying to build your business back then in the late 90s, with the very, very beginning of the internet, let's face it. It's like trying to build a house with a rock and some sticks. I mean, it was very rudimentary tools, shall we say. Now I mean, you literally could think of a book and publish it this weekend, with KDP and everything that we have. And by the way, since I have published 25 books now, and, I've mentioned that, I am the only author who has been published by all these big different publishing corporations. I've also self-published more books too. So I have done both. I have done the traditional publishing, with the six-figure advances, the world's biggest publishing houses, as well as still self-publishing, but using the modern tools that we have today. And so now I actually have a book done for you service because a lot of people, when they hear my story, they say, "Hey, Noah, I want to write a book too. I want to be an author like you are. Can you help me?" And I'm like, I had so many requests for this. I realized, maybe I should start a service with this, and help people with that. And I actually do that now. So we have a book done for you service where, just as a quick example, we had one client who was is a stem cell doctor in Nashville, and when he talked to me, he said that he had been thinking about writing his book for 10 years. Thinking about writing his book for 10 years. He hadn't done anything. He's like, I don't know where to start. It's very confusing, kind of like what you were just saying a moment ago. And so he hired me to get it done. Well, we got it done from in 8 weeks. So think about that, from 10 years of just thinking about it to 8 weeks and it's done. That's what happens when you have a system and a team to help you. So really, yeah, I mean, it is so important to get the support that you need to keep going, because especially at the beginning of any endeavor, that's always when it's going to be the hardest, because you're not really seeing the fruits of your labor yet. And so that is when it's hardest. And that's really why you do need to get that support, especially from the beginning, if possible.
So we'll probably get into some of these tactics and tools, and it's one of the things that I'm finally coming to grips with, um, Noah, is that you have to let the people who are able to be a 10 out of 10 at what they do take over whenever you're someone like me who will find himself doing a lot of things that I'm a 6 out of 10 on, just because I'm like you. I'm a hustler. I will figure it out. I will figure it out. The problem is when you're guys like us, you'll if just because you figured out, you'll think I figured out, so I have to do it. And I'm trying to get to the point where I hand over more of that work. For example, the last book that, and I'll gift you a copy of it. The last book that I wrote was called The Stone Chiseler, my very first uh, work of fiction, and it was inspired by Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. A lot of the stuff that you talk about, it's a fictitious, almost it's written like a parable, and I I just endeavored to do everything myself. So this time, unlike my first couple of books, I didn't hire an editor. And it came out and it was, the editing's probably poor. The formatting, you just because you get it on accepted by KDP doesn't mean the format is right, as
No,
as
not
you'll
really.
attest to. It'll finally accept it after 150 times of telling you there's an error or a format, and it goes, oh, and so you think you've won the lottery. Oh my gosh, this one's gonna go. And then it comes printed out, and you're like, what the heck? This has twice as
Right.
many pages as it should. So anyway,
Right.
so I think that's key. So with that said, making the bold assumption that there's going to be some of that, I want to talk about your new book, which is called The Seven Figure Expert: Your Ultimate Guide to a Life of More Impact, Influence, and Financial Freedom. So you're someone who's written a ton of books. You've worked with some of the best publishers. You've forgotten more than most people listening to this will know about success and helping people have impact. What's different about this book?
Well, it's so funny because this is something that I now have been privileged to do for many years now, have a seven-figure expert business. And I realized that I hadn't actually written a book about that. I've written a lot of books about habits and mindset and changing your life and things like that, but I just hadn't written a book about how to actually be a seven-figure expert. And I realized that that is one of the biggest things that people come to me for. They say, "Hey, no, I want to scale up my business." Even if they're just getting started, the dream is to get to six figures, and then of course seven and eight if you want. But a lot of entrepreneurs really find that that seven figure level is really like a sweet spot because once you get over, into the eight figures and above, you're really most of the time reaching a level of complexity that really is frankly more annoying than anything. And I've talked to many, many entrepreneurs who said that, I was making more in my business when I was making seven figures that now my business of eight figures, me personally bringing home more. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I know what that's like. So to me, lifestyle is way more important than money. Now, don't get
Amen.
me wrong, money absolutely leads to a better lifestyle. Remember, I grew up poor, so I know what it's like to be poor, and it sucks. There's nothing good about it. It absolutely sucks. So I'm a huge proponent of making money, but there really is, and in many cases, I've seen most cases, there is a law of diminishing returns, like, so, hey, your business is bringing in this, but you're bringing in even less sometimes. So anyway, so the seven figure expert, that's what the book is about helping you as the expert, as that person who, and whether you're just getting started or even if you've been doing this for a while, for me, I wish that somebody would have given me these tools, these strategies, these formulas, these frameworks, these fill in the blank checklists. And in fact, I paid a lot of gurus a lot of money, over $500,000 over the past 20 plus years, only to find out they can't teach their way out of a paper bag. They truly suck at teaching. They're great self promoters, but they suck at teaching. And so that's what I did. I all of my books I wrote for me. First, I'm like, I'm the first guinea pig, and I wish someone would have given me this. I mean, if I would have had what I give you in this book, 30 years ago when I started, I'd be a gazillionaire by now. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm doing fine, I'm doing okay. But man, it would have been nice to have this a long time ago. So that's really where all of my books come from, is helping you, the reader, the listener, to really scale up and have that lifestyle that I think we're all looking for as entrepreneurs.
All right, I'm going to put you on the hot seat. I told you I'm going to be selfish and try to get as much out of this as I possibly can personally. So one of the things that I struggle with
Mhm.
is my coaching business that I would love to do, and I want it to be scalable. One of the things I'm sure that you've learned, like I got to imagine if I were going to have Noah St. John come personally coach me in Tyler, Texas, or whatever, the 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 expense of that would be so enormous that it just be practical, and it wouldn't be for you. And the reason why is because it goes back to you. The opportunity cost would be too high for you to come out here for anything less than some astronomical amount of money. So therefore, you have scaled through your books, through online training, and all these different things. Well, that's where I am because one of the things you mentioned there, I will not sacrifice my lifestyle, which my wife and I personally manage and protect very carefully.
Yep.
I will not sacrifice that for the sake of money. Will not do it.
Mhm.
So I have created a ton of content, Noah. I love to teach. My gift, if you were to sum it up to one thing, I'm an encourager. I love to take entrepreneurs, people, and help encourage them. It's where it fills me up. It's a purposeful venture. It's where I have those impact. Where I get stuck, and I think that okay, do you happen to use ClickFunnels for your marketing? I looked at one of your
I
books.
do. Yes, I
Okay,
do. Mhm.
it looks awesome.
Thank you.
So, okay, so Dr. Noah, you're coaching Jason Wright. And Dr. Noah, I have paid for ClickFunnels. I think Russell Brunson is an unbelievable entrepreneur. I see that Dean DeGraziosi thinks he is, and Tony Robbins says he is. Now, Dr. Noah St. John has bought into his product. I agree. It is the best product in the market. But here's the problem. I have all this amazing content that I've worked on for years. I want to market it through ClickFunnels,
Mhm.
but I start trying to build my first funnel and I hit a wall. And I
Mhm.
feel like that is the thing that is
Mhm.
holding me back the most. It's just getting over that hump. And then even if I get a funnel done,
Mhm.
I'm a horrible marketer. See, my gifts are teaching, encouraging, inspiring, and communication. That's what I love to do.
Mhm.
My biggest weakness is getting in is actually marketing that stuff. So,
Mhm.
Dr. Noah, how can I build my business? We're using some of the same tools. How would you guide me on that? Or what tactics are in this book? It sounds like what I need to read that you would impart to me.
Okay, well, that is a huge question, which I'm happy to answer. But I want to let you know that it has multi layers of what I'm about to say. Okay, so there are many, many layers to your question. And by the way, your question, Jason, I know many, many of your listeners and people watch this program have the exact same question.
Sure.
In fact, Russell Brunson's a dear friend of mine. I mean, he and I go way back. I was actually one of the very first beta testers of ClickFunnels. I'll just tell you a funny story about ClickFunnels. So Russell actually reached out to me and he emailed me and he said, "Hey, Noah, I'm coming out with this thing called ClickFunnels." I mean, you can see how long ago that was, right? Whatever it is, I think it's 10 years at least, right now. So anyway, so we've known each other for a long time. And he was a sweet guy, great guy. So I said, he said, "Hey, Noah, would you be one of our beta testers?" I said, "Yeah, sure, whatever." And so I tried it and I'm like, this thing sucks. And I told him, I'm like, this sucks, man. Because Russell is a brilliant marketer. He's a great guy and he's a brilliant marketer. So when ClickFunnels came out, I mean, he did a great job because he said, "Hey, this will build your funnels. It'll wash your car. It'll shine your shoes. It'll get your girlfriend before Friday. I mean, it'll do this. It'll do that. It'll do that." He's a great marketer, right? So I mean, the hype level was like through the roof, and I'm like, great. And I look up like, this thing sucks. I can't do anything. I
It
mean,
breaks my brain, man. It breaks
I'm
my
like,
brain.
what the hell is this?
Yeah.
Now, again, remember, this is over 10 years ago, okay, that I'm talking.
Yeah.
So I said, dude, I told him, I mean, I was frank with him. I said, this thing really doesn't do anything. I mean, none of those things that you just said is what it does. And so, he was cool about it. But and I said, probably just me, but I don't get it. So anyway, then I tried something else, and that was even worse. And I tried this other thing, and that was an absolute nightmare. So it was about a year actually later, and so I was just sitting around, and I was so frustrated with this other thing, and I said, you know what? Let me just try this ClickFunnels thing again. Maybe he fixed it. And sure enough, I went back and I'm like, oh, now it works.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, thanks, Russell. Thank you. This is great. So, and since then, I've never looked back. So that's about 2016. In fact, is when I went back to it. And yeah, we built my team and I literally have built over 200 funnels over the last 8 or so years. Over 200 funnels. Now,
Wow.
so here's where it's interesting. Now, I know Russell very well. He's a great guy. Now, I know for a fact that there are over 300,000 users of ClickFunnels. Over 300,000. That speaks to, what a great businessman or great marketer he is. But did you know that over 90% of those 300,000 people on ClickFunnels have not built their fascinating. I wonder why. Because of everything I've been teaching for 30 years. So the point is, I solved the very problem that is the problem, and I've been solving it for many, many years now. Now, let me speak to that in two ways. Okay, and of course, I talk about this in the Seven Figure Expert book, and really all of my books talk about this, what I'm about to say. All right, so whenever we look at any human problem, any endeavor, right? Any goal, anything we want to accomplish. There are always two elements to that goal, that endeavor, that dream, that wish, that hope. Two elements. And those two elements are exactly what I've been teaching for 30 years and exactly why I've helped my clients make over $3 billion collectively, meaning, adding 6 figures, 7 figures, 8 figures to people's business while winning their lives back at the same time. Again, not sacrificing lifestyle for money, the exact opposite, getting the money and having the lifestyle. How have we done it with these two elements? And that is called inner game and outer game. So I want you to remember, for the folks listening, that I am known as the nerdiest nerd in this industry, right? I'm known as the Sheldon Cooper of self-help. And that's what I mean by that is I just love to nerd out on this stuff. And by that, I mean, get into the microcosm, the microscopic things that everybody else misses. And so as a nerd, I love Venn diagrams. And this is my very favorite Venn diagram of all time. It's right in the book and you'll see it. But it's one circle here and one circle there. This circle is inner game. This circle is outer game. This circle of inner game is everything that happens between your ears that you can't see directly, that affects everything that you do. And by the way, as a keynote speaker, I get to speak to organizations, teams, companies all around the country and around the world. I'm flying to Las Vegas next week. In fact, I'm speaking at the world's not the world's largest, but the country's largest event for events. It's literally the event for events. So there's going to be 15,000 people from all around the world coming to Las Vegas next week, and I'm privileged to be speaking there. So as a keynote speaker, one of the things I ask my audience members is, what's one area of your life where your beliefs don't affect you? And here's what people do. They go, and I go, exactly. There's no place your beliefs don't affect you, right? Your beliefs affect your health, your wealth, your finances, your business, your career, whether you get the job, whether you get the promotion, your family life, your social life, everything. There's no place in your life where your beliefs don't affect you. But here's what's interesting. You can't see a belief. You can only see the effects of a belief. All right. So that's why you can be doing really well in one area of your life, but maybe you're stuck or struggling in another. For example, maybe your health is really good, but maybe your business isn't quite where you want it to be, or vice versa, right? Maybe you're making a lot of money, but your health is suffering or your relationships are suffering. That's why there's a lot of miserable millionaires out there, right? That's what we don't want to be. We want to be a millionaire, sure, but not a miserable one. All right. So that's your inner game. And then we also have your outer game. Now, your outer game is everything you can see directly. That's all the systems, strategies, the sales funnels, the marketing, all of the offers, funnels, traffic, all that outer game stuff. Now, here's where it gets really fascinating. And this is, in fact, why I've helped people make so much money over the last 3 decades. And that is 90% of success is based on your inner game. Now, how can I say that? Well, because I've helped my clients make over $3 billion. And 90% of that money has come when I help them with their inner game. Okay. That's point number one. And I'll give you an example or several examples of that in a moment. Number two, I want you to think about, let's just talk about ClickFunnels for a second, right? That's where we started this part of this conversation. On ClickFunnels, every one of those 300,000 people can go in at any time and go, here's how to build a funnel. Click this, do that, drag, drop, copy, paste, done. How hard is that? Not very hard. So what's stopping people? Is it the clicking and the dragging and dropping? Or is it something else? I wonder. It is, in fact, for 90% of those people, it is, in fact, the inner game, the very thing that I've been fixing for 30 years. All right, so let me give you an example. I was talking with one of my clients, and I asked the same question of all of my clients, right? I mean, I have a formula for coaching, of course, and frameworks. Everybody's different. It's not cookie cutter, one size fits all. It's very customized and personalized for each individual. However, I have a framework. If you don't, you're just talking. Hey, how's your dog? No, it's we have a framework that we put people through. That's why they scale up so quickly. So one of the questions I ask my clients, and I was talking with one of my clients, his name's Charles. I said, "Hey, Charles." Now he had been reading my books, studying me. He understood what makes me different, what makes my paradigm, my philosophy, my approach different from everybody else. And I asked him, how much do you think it's going to cost you if we don't put this in place in the next 12 months? Just the next 12 months. How much do you think it's going to cost you if we don't do this? Now, without batting an eye, he said $1 million. He said, no, I'm easily going to lose out on $1 million if we don't get this problem fixed. And remember, he'd been studying my books. He knew what I was talking about, everything I'm talking about right now. And so he said, it's easily going to cost me $1 million. And I said, and he pointed out that, or I pointed out that it's not just 1 year, it is year over year, right? You don't just lose out on that for 1 year. You lose out year over year, right? So it's way more than $1 million. But that's just the next 12 months. So I said, tell you what, Charles, why don't you just give me 10% of that million? Just give me 10% of that million and I will find you $1 million in the next 12 months. In other words, if you give me $1 and I give you $10 back, is that a good deal? He goes, well, yeah, that's a good deal. And I said, okay. And he goes, yeah, let's do it. So literally in one phone call, he decided to invest 100K. That's 10% of $1 million, right? 100K. He invested that with coaching with me for 1 year, right? So I coached him one-on-one for a year. And as it turns out, I didn't find him $1 million in the next 12 months. Instead, I found him 1.8 million in just 10 months. So he gave me $1 and I gave him $18 back. Is that a good deal? No, that's a great deal. And in fact, he sent me an email. And he said, hey, Noah, guess where I am? I'm on a 7-week vacation with my wife. He said, we just bought a new RV. He said, this is a dream I've had for years, but I never had the money and I didn't have the time. He said, now because of coaching with you, now I have more money than ever before, but even better, I've got more time. So we're taking 7 weeks off. We're driving around the country. He said, this is a dream I've had for years. And he said, thank you, Noah, for changing my life. So that's an example of how powerful these frameworks and this system is.
Can I ask you a quick question, Noah? Because one of the things that I have clients that have put me on retainer for the equivalent of not 100 grand, but I guess 80 grand, and then for actual personal coaching and scaling their business as entrepreneurs. Okay. The first thing I feel when that happens is this weight of responsibility. I think that's one of the hardest things whenever you're coaching, consulting, or anything. It's one of the weight of if they're not successful, like I've encouraged them to be, then I take it personally. So one, I'd like to know, how do you overcome that? What is that self-talk? And the 90%, I'm with you 100% on that idea. Michael Gervais, one of my favorite sports psychologists, he says the exact same thing. The difference between two champions, the one that wins most of the time, the one that doesn't, is mindset. One of the things that he says also, though, is that when it comes to and I want to get into your affirmations, because I think this will flow nicely to that. One of the things that Michael Gervais says is that you can't BS yourself. You can't just say, yes, I can climb Mount Everest. No, you have to have something to point to in your brain that you've done that would indicate you can climb Mount Everest as kind of a reinforcement. So what do you use to set that up whenever you get somebody saying, yeah, I'm going to stroke you a check for 100K. That's no small amount to help me achieve this. What are the things that you tell yourself? Because like for me, I guarantee of those 300,000 people, a lot of them, they think like me that I've slowed it. I can do all the tactics. And also I'm a very imperfect perfectionist. So I do get caught up in letting perfect be the enemy of good on the ClickFunnels in particular. But here's the thing I guarantee you, most of them are saying, it's what I say is that, you know what, I'm going to go through all this and I just don't think anybody's going to buy anything that I'm putting out there. I think I'm going to pay for these ads on Facebook or wherever, and no one's going to respond. Or if they do, they're going to pay, and I'm not going to see it. I'm not going to go into my dashboard. I'm going to miss something. It's like all these things. They start flooding into my head, saying, "Yeah, this isn't going to work." I can do tactically all the things that it takes to get the funnels out there and to get the challenge built or whatever, but nobody's going to be interested. So whenever you got that client, and I don't know where that was in your journey, whether you'd had 20 other 100,000 to $200,000 clients when you got to this guy, but kind of that first one, if that's not it, What was it that pressured you? And it reminds me of Russell Brunson because if I'm not mistaken, Russell, when he started out, he had like 70 people that had signed up for his first course
Mhm.
and they paid all this money. And he's like, now I got to figure out something to teach them. I've got to get some experts. I've got, and he did. I mean, the guy is so impressed. And by the way, when he started this, the dude looked like he was like 12 with his little flat top haircut. He had
Oh,
never
yeah.
shaved a day in his life, and
Yep.
yet he still did it. So it's also, I know I said a lot there, but basically, what is that self talk that you do whenever someone places the trust in you to succeed, to make to deliver on that? Because one of the hardest things for me, I want to always add more value than what people have paid
Of
me for.
course.
How do you
Yeah.
work through that?
Well, it's very simple. See, I have a system that I developed, created called the Power Habit System. Now, this is my book, one of my seminal books called Power Habits. You can go to powerhabitsbook.com and check that out. So I have created, as a result of all that study that I told you about earlier, over 30 years. I mean, now it's, more like almost 50 years. But so I created the Power Habit System. There it is right there on page 100. All right. So I have a system. I created this system, the Power Habit System. And that is the framework that I put my clients through. So I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, because it has over 30 years of proof, that if I put someone through this framework and they are willing to do the work, they're willing to at least meet me halfway, if they are even a little bit coachable, even a little bit open, even a little bit willing to try something different, because we all know the definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. We know that. So the person that hires me to coach them, I would say almost every time has already read all the self-help books. They've been to all the seminars. They've heard all the gurus, and they all say the same damn thing. And set your goals and think positive and you can do it. And yeah, and you're like, okay, yeah, I got it. What else is there? And that's where I was. Remember, I wrote all these books for me first. All right. So that's exactly where I was. I'm like, okay, I heard all you guys say all the same things. How come I'm keep hitting this income ceiling? And it was because of what I created and what I teach. So I don't even depend as much on me as I depend on my system. My system, in fact, I had a client, one of my very, very first coaching clients. And by the way, he went from, let's see, he told me that he made more in 12 weeks than he did in the previous 12 months after coaching with me. I mean, and that was literally in a span of 12 weeks. He made more in that 12 weeks than he did in the previous 12 months, while we're actually working less. He said, "No, do you realize that your system never not works?" I said, "Well, yeah, that's true. You're right. It does." And in fact, he also said, "Did you realize that your power habit system is the only coaching system that fixes every other coaching?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's true too. You're right. That's a good point. I hadn't thought of these things, but it's nice to hear from one of my clients, not me saying it, but he said it." And I'll give you another great example. Of one of my clients named Tamisa. She's an entrepreneur out in Arizona. Real great, dynamic person, great personality. And she is a self-described seminar junkie, right? It's exactly what I'm talking about. Going to all the seminars. And she was doing fine in her business, doing six figures, doing well, but she just kept hitting that income ceiling and she couldn't figure out why and she couldn't break through. So she, found out about me online, signed up for my 12-week breakthrough program. Well, she ended up tripling her investment in the first 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, she tripled her investment. We haven't even gotten to the money part yet. That's how powerful these power habits really are. So when I talk about inner game and outer game, and inner game being 90%, that really is true.
Yeah, it has been a game changer for me. Like I grew up with a very fixed mindset. I know I'm sure you're very familiar with Dr. Dweck's work, and it wasn't until much later in life, man, that I realized that I had this fixed mindset, and then the growth mindset, and just the self talk of just whenever when I start I mean going into a you can't do that, you're not capable, to that no, you can't do that yet. I mean, it has been a complete game changer for me, and it's with everything. So that brings us to another thing that I know that you talk about quite a bit, which is trash talk. Let's talk about some of the trash talk that I guarantee you this audience they have floating around in their head, and what's the Hoover to suck that stuff out that you mentally can clean your mind of some of that trash talk with? What are some actual tactical ways to get that trash talk out of your head?
Yeah. Well, so by the way, I call it head trash. So this is
Head
another
trash.
book.
There you go.
And no, I will not hold up all 25 books. So just so you know. But anyway, so this book is called Get Rid of Your Head Trash About Money. You can get this book also for free. The book is free. I cover the cost of the book. You can get this book. We just, you cover the shipping. This book is available at sendmeabooknoah.com. Very easy to remember. Sendmeabooknoah.com. So anyway, we call it your head trash. And I've written basically these 25 books about taking out, your head trash. So the first question that, people ask me is, well, Noah, what is head trash? What are we talking about here? So head trash is, I've been teaching it for 30 years now. Head trash is the voice in your head that says, I can't do it because dot, dot, dot. I can't do it because. So for everyone listening to this program, think about your goals. Think about what it is that you want. All right. So, for example, maybe you want to add $10,000 a month to your business, right? That's a very popular and very strong goal, right? I want to add 10K a month to my business. Or if you're just starting out, I want to get to 10K a month, right? I'm at zero. I want to get to 10K, or I want to add another 10K a month. So if you think about it, adding 10K a month is really life-changing money. That's life-changing. That's paying off your mortgage early. That's taking vacations. That's sending your kids to the best schools, having that lifestyle that really we all want. So 10K a month is life-changing. There's no question about it. For most people. So when you think about that goal, and that's just one example, I'm not saying that's like the goal. I'm saying that's a goal, right? So you could have a goal of, I want to lose weight. I want to get in shape. I want to find love. I want to find my soulmate. I want to have a happier marriage. I want to have a better family life, right? I've helped people with all of the above and more. So when you think about your goal, what people don't realize is what happens after you set the goal, right? I want this. But what most people do is right after they set that goal, they go, I probably can't do it. Right. And it gets even more interesting because I can't do it because dot, dot, dot. Oh, no, I want to make more money. I want to grow my business, but I can't I don't have the time. I can't afford it. I don't have the money. Oh, my spouse won't let me do it, or I'm too busy. Oh, I got the kids and, we got soccer practice and ballet recitals and I'm just too busy. And you're giving all these reasons of why you can't do that thing that you just said you wanted. And here's what's fascinating about your head trash. You always make yourself right. You always make yourself right. Now, Henry Ford has a great quote, or there's a quote attributed to Henry Ford. He said, whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, you're right. Now, with all due respect to Mr. Ford, I updated that quote. And here's how I like to say it. Whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, you make yourself right. You make yourself right. Right. So if you're saying, hey, Noah, I want to make more money, but I can't do it because I can't afford it, or I can't afford coaching, or I can't afford to learn, or I can't afford to hire someone. Okay, you're right. Can you make yourself right? And so one of the things that, I do with my clients is I say, I want you to write down, like, what are your goals? Which, of course, everybody talks about that. Goals, goals, goals. We've heard that a million times. But then I want you to write down, what is your head trash saying about that? Oh, I can't do it because. Okay, well, that is the problem. The goal is almost immaterial. The head trash is, in fact, your foot on the brake. So think about this for a second. Your goal is like a destination. All right. So think about your goal like going down the street to the grocery store. Right. Now, here's what you wouldn't do. You wouldn't get in your car, go to the grocery store, walk around the grocery store for an hour, get back in your car and come home. Nobody would do that, right? No one in their right mind would ever do that. Why? Because there was no reason for doing that. You walked around the store and you didn't do anything. That doesn't make any sense. So why do you go to the grocery store? You go to the grocery store to get something, right? I need milk, eggs, bread, butter, whatever, right? There's a purpose for you doing that. So what is the purpose of this goal? Oh, I want more money. Okay, why? Why do you want more money? Well, to buy stuff. Really? That's it? You see what I'm getting at? So we got to understand, why do you want that thing? I'm not saying that it's right or wrong. It doesn't matter. I'm saying, why do you want that thing? Number one. Number two, What are the reasons why you're saying you can't get it? So imagine, let's get back in your car. You get back in your car and you're driving to the grocery store. But did you know that most people are driving down the road of life with one foot on the brake? They're driving down the road of life with one foot on the brake. And they're wondering, geez, why am I not getting very far? Okay. So here's what happens. They're like, they understand that they're not where they want to be. And so they try lots of things. They go to all the gurus. And guru number one says, hey, man, the reason you're not getting your goals is because you should put a better type of gas in your car, right? Go get this expensive gas and then you'll get to your goals faster. So you go, all right, you go to the gas station, you put in the super octane, you pay a lot more money. You get back in your car, but you still have your foot on the brake. Same habit, same result. Guru number two comes along and says, hey, you know what? You need new tires. Your tires aren't good enough. Get these super duper tires. They're really expensive, but they're worth it. Look at me. I got great tires and I got accomplished my goals. I'm like, all right, all right. Well, she did it. So I guess I'll try it. You go to the store, get new tires, spend all this money. Same habit, same result. Finally, guru number three says, hey, man, you should get a new sports car. Look, I got this really cool Italian sports car. You should get one like me. Look how cool I am. And you're like, oh, man, geez, that's a lot of money. But you're like, well, all right, well, work for him. So you go out, you buy a new sports car, you get back in your car, but you're still doing the same habit and you're still getting the same result. So here's what I do that's different. I come along and I say this. Did you know you have your foot on the brake? And you're like, what? What? And I go, yeah, if you just take your foot off the brake, you'll actually reach your goals a lot faster. You're like, what? Yeah, if you just take your foot off the brake, which is in fact your head trash, if we just take your foot off the brake, you're actually going to reach your goals, 10 times faster and easier, and it'll take you less time. It'll cost you a lot less money. And you're like, where do I sign? You know what I mean? It's like, that's how fast it is. Cause it's like, oh my God, why didn't no one ever tell me this before? I'm like, that's where I come in. So that is the entirety of what I've been doing for a long, long time and why I help people make so much money and win their lives back at the same time.
I love it. 100%. All right. Now, I want to talk a little bit about unconscious habits.
Mhm.
People that are successful, they have these unconscious habits. Talk a little bit about what you mean.
Well, that is the essence of my power habit system. So there are many, many books out there about habits, right? A lot of people talk about habits, right? What, in fact, what inspired me to get into this business was the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey.
Sure.
I was actually standing. This was in the early '90s when I was just starting to really get into this, and I was in my church bookstore. I'm just browsing the books, like I do, and something fell at my feet, off the shelves, and it fell. I'm going, and I looked around. I'm going, there's no one around here. Did the wind just come in? I'm like, what the heck was that? So I reached down, I picked it up, and it said the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I'm like, oh, that sounds cool. Now, I'd never heard of it before. Literally, never heard of it. And this was in the days of audio tapes, audio cassettes, those things that go around in a circle for those younger people who don't know what that is. But anyway, so I put the audio tape in my car and I listened to it over and over and over again. I mean, there were tears streaming down my face. I realized that my whole life I'd been living the 7 Habits of Highly Ineffective People. So I was doing the exact opposite of everything he said. I'm like, oh my gosh, no wonder. So that really was the impetus for me getting into this business. And what was amazing was, years later, I actually got to interview Dr. Covey before he sadly passed away a few years ago. And he was amazing and just wonderful. And, exactly what you would want Stephen Covey to be. He was absolutely perfect. I had 20 uninterrupted minutes with Stephen Covey on the phone, and he was wonderful. And he said something that I'll never forget and that I try to emulate to this day. And he said, because I asked him, because at that time I really wanted to be an author, a speaker, I wanted to do what he does. And I said, Dr. Covey, how do you handle it when people just worship you and they just, come up to you and they're just, saying you're the greatest thing in the world? How do you handle that? And he said something I never forgot. I remember every day. And he said, Noah, I want people to leave my seminars or my coaching more impressed with themselves than with me. I went, wow, that's awesome. Now, isn't that amazing? Isn't that the exact opposite of what we see today? With all the social media and look how cool I am and, look at all my stuff and look at my jet and my boat and my helicopter. There's nothing wrong with nice things. Don't get me wrong. I love nice things. I mean, I have a beautiful home, beautiful wife, beautiful everything. But Is that really the point? You know, when I see that with these gurus, I go, okay, that's great that you have all this nice stuff, but have you helped anyone else make any money? Have you helped anyone else reach their goals? And usually you don't see too many. You just don't see many examples from them except themselves. And so for me, that's why when you go to my website, when you go to noahstjohn.com or breakthroughwithnoah.com, and you see just literally hundreds of case studies, hundreds of examples, because I'd rather brag about my clients than myself. If I'm only bragging about me, then you have one person. Then you have what I call personality driven success. That's what they do. It's their personality. And that's great. That's great that, you're so successful. But what if I don't have that personality? Well, then I guess you're out of luck, which is most of us don't have that personality, right? So that's what the difference is with what I do with my power habit system is it's a system driven success. It's about a system. What does that mean? It means anybody can do it. You just fill in the blanks, you follow the checklist. This is what I paid all these guys all this money for, and they never gave me. They never gave me a checklist. They never, I begged them, I paid them. I said, give me the checklist. Nope. Then we're going. So anyway, that's what the difference is, between the power habit system, my power habit system, and what you see out there is because it's not about my personality. It doesn't really matter, what I say. It's about what the system does. And when you follow the system, when you follow the checklist, it's essentially impossible not to succeed.
So it's funny. The one thing, it's kind of interesting that you said that's what Dr. Covey told you was, people feeling good about themselves. Because the one takeaway that has stuck with me, and I read The Seven Habits not long after I finished undergrad. And the thing I always remember is the story about, I guess it was a student that, maybe I get this wrong. They went to a tennis tournament instead of Dr. Covey's class or something to that effect. And so they missed an exam. And he's like, no, you chose to not be here. And it was like, it was impossible for me to be in your class. And he said, no, it was possible for you to be here. You made another choice. And then, of course, that led into understanding opportunity costs and this sort of thing. But what it did is it reinforced in me that we do have so many more choices than we give ourselves credit for, especially some of these folks that live 100% in the matrix. They forget that there's actual choices and there's actual agency that we can exercise at any time we want. One more question before I let you go, because sounds like, we have a very similar passion for self education. A lot of the things that I know about, like what you're talking about with these unconscious habits, and like it's like understanding the malleability of our mind and our reticular activating system and the myelin, the pathways that we can like actually create these super highways in our brains for all this stuff. It all makes me sound smart and geeky when I'm telling these things to people, but really it's not. I mean, I'm just like, no, I just decided to go learn how can I reprogram my brain. There was a time where I finally came to the conclusion my brain just doesn't function at the level I want it to. So I've got to go learn. And I'm not going back to, although I will say this, with things like MIT's open courseware and Harvard X and these things,
Yes.
it's amazing the self education you can do now. So, and by the way, listening to your story is so similar to what Tony Robbins says. He grew up in unfortunate circumstances, started taking the bus downtown. He was a janitor, and then he'd go and he would get tapes and he would just feed his mind. So,
Yeah.
all that to say, with regard to the amazing library you put together, as well as the other things, how important is it for the listeners out here to make self-education a part of their self-improvement practice?
It goes back to what I said earlier, which is the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. It's funny. My brother and he's 18 months older than me. So I'm the middle child, which shouldn't surprise anybody. But anyway, so, he didn't make the choices that I made. He's still lives in Kennybunk. He, lives his life and he's doing fine. But I realized that if I stayed in that situation, I was going to stay in that mindset. And for me, I had to physically leave. I had to physically move away from that because I realized that that was the emblematic for me of poverty consciousness. And I said, and which is so ironic because it's one of the wealthiest communities, Kennebunkport, Maine. I mean, if you go there, you're like, wow. In
I
fact, I
bumped
just
into a bush somewhere.
yeah, exactly. And I literally actually just went to my 40th high school reunion. My wife and I were back there. I was driving around. I hadn't been back for a while. And when you grow up somewhere, you just take it for granted. It's like, oh, well, everybody lives this way, right? I'm driving around. I'm going, this isn't wealthy. This is super wealthy. I mean, this isn't the top 1%. This is top 0.1%. I'm going, wow, this is how I grew up. Really? You don't know. So anyway, I was like, wow. But, for me, that's what that represented. So, here I live in Northeast Ohio. I have a 6,000 square foot mansion on a hill. And I was able to pay off the mortgage because of everything that I teach in my books. I was able to pay off the mortgage 27 years early, thanks to everything that I teach people. So really, I believe that is what has enabled me. Well, there's no question. This is what has enabled me to create this life that I wanted. And there's been a lot of sacrifice along the way, a lot of things that I didn't get to do. But now I get to do what I want. I do live the life that I want. I have that freedom lifestyle, where I have the time, the energy, the relationships, and the money. Those are the 4 elements of a freedom lifestyle that I teach people. And that when you have the time, the energy, the relationships, and the money you want, you're living a freedom lifestyle. And conversely, if you don't have that, if you don't have the time, you don't have the energy, you don't have the relationships, and you don't have the money you want, you don't really have that freedom. That really is why we got into business in the first place, right? That's why we did it as entrepreneurs. And so anyway, that's really the focus of all of my work, is to give people freedom, the time freedom, the financial freedom, the location freedom, so that they are living the lives that they've always dreamed of and that they never really thought, in many cases, was possible. So I love giving that gift to people. And that is really why I do what I do every day.
Well, I tell you, this is fantastic. Now, before I let you go, I want to know, where can people find your book? I see here that we can get your book for free, and I want you to send me all the links, any downloads we need. I'll have that in the show notes. But how do people not only get your new book, but how do they follow you? How do they stay in touch with you? How can people benefit from the wisdom of Dr. Noah St. John beyond this podcast?
Well, here is this book, which we started talking about, and there's a lot more here. So it's the 7-Figure Expert, your ultimate guide to a life of more impact, influence, and financial freedom. That's what most entrepreneurs, experts want, is the impact, the influence, and the financial freedom. So all you have to do is very simple, easy to remember, 7figureexpertbook.com, or easy to remember, 7figureexpertbook.com. The book is free. I've covered the cost of the book. You just cover the shipping. So again, it's 7figureexpertbook.com. And then if you'd like to talk to me or one of my coaches, go to breakthroughwithnoah.com. Easy to remember. Breakthrough with Noah. I'm known as the Breakthrough Coach. So when you go to breakthroughwithnoah.com, there's a 2-minute video there. You can watch that and then just make an appointment with me or one of my coaches. It's a 15-minute complimentary business evaluation. We'll take a look at your business, where you are, where you want to be, what's in the way, what's holding you back, where the gaps are. And then we're going to lay out a 3-step system for you to actually reach your goals up to 10 times faster. So that's at breakthroughwithnoah.com, and my main site, good old noahstjohn.com. That's my name, just good old noahstjohn.com. And you can see all the stuff we do.
Well, and there's one thing though. I'm so sorry. I forgot. And I got to ask this question because it means a lot to me. I want you to tell this audience the difference between Afformations, which you coined, versus Affirmations. And the reason being, and I want you to correct me if I'm wrong, or maybe you go, oh, never thought about that. To me, Afformations is very, very tied to logotherapy. And it resonated with me with Viktor Frankl's work, as I mentioned earlier, was the inspiration for a book I wrote, of understanding what your purpose in a moment, good and bad, what is that changes everything. So, and I may be completely off, but Dr. Noah, talk about the difference between Afformations and Affirmations. I got to get that in before I let you go.
Okay, well, this is another book. I got to hold it up. So here it is. It's the book of Afformations. This is my book from Hay House. Go to afformations.com. And again, it's AFFORMATIONS, afformations.com, or the book is at afformationsbook.com. All right. So very, very briefly, an affirmation is everything we've heard a million times. It's a statement of something you want to be true. I'm happy, I'm rich, I'm successful. And your brain goes, no, you're not. Right. So my Afformations method that I invented 30 years ago it was actually the shower that changed everything, right? I talk about this in my books and my coaching. I was actually in the shower when I invented this. And so an affirmation is an empowering question that assumes that what you want is already true. And why does this work so incredibly effectively and quickly and easily and powerfully? Well, because the human mind actually responds automatically to questions. It's called the embedded presupposition factor of your mind. And so when we ask a question, your mind automatically searches for the answer. So I realized many years ago, why are we going around making statements we don't believe when the human mind responds automatically to questions? So that's why I invented and I gave the name of this method, my Afformations method. Again, it's Afformations, Afformations.com. And that's really the essence of it. It is using the embedded presupposition factor of your brain to ask empowering questions, because when you ask empowering questions, it leads to better answers, leads to better results. And that is one of the things that leads you to your new life. Now, just so you know, for everyone who is wondering, so affirmations are actually the first of my power habits. When I showed you that earlier, the power habits system, which is right here, affirmations are actually the foundational power habits. So these two things really do go together. The book of affirmations and power habits, they really are my two seminal works, along with Seven Figure Expert. But anyway, that's how all of that really ties together.
Very good. Thank you. I'm so glad we got that in there. I would have been so mad at myself if I had this. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Well, I tell you what, Dr. Noah St. John, it has been absolutely a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you. Thank you so much. And folks, I will have everything in the show notes so that you can get in touch with Dr. Noah. And I appreciate you listening. And remember, never, ever, ever stop improving, always in all ways. He's Dr. Noah St. John. I'm Jason, and we're out. Well, that does it for this episode of The Jason Wright Show. Thank you so much for listening. This has been a Texas Titan Media production. Fourth Wall did the music. And as always, thank you so much for listening. Please consider going out to jasonwrightnow.com and signing up for the Vitruvian Letter. Also, please go out to iTunes. It takes like 30 seconds to just leave us a 5-star rating. It does wonders for the podcast. I would be so grateful. And with that, until we meet again, go crush it and endeavor to improve always in all ways. I'm out.